right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Friday. Yay! It's Friday, April 29th, 2016. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Friday, everybody. It is 47 degrees and pretty cloudy here in upstate New York. But wow, does it look like spring has finally sprung. All my flowers are popping out front. All right, so where did we leave off yesterday? We titled the show Commoditized, Sliced, and Diced Life as New Tech Economy. We talked about some extremely disturbing things, including how they have now been able to coax sperm out of your very own stem cells. You know, I had postulated when we were looking at this coaxing yesterday that they probably could also coax egg cells out of skin cells, since it seems that skin cells can do just about anything, and your love handle cells can be turned into pluripotent stem cells as well, which are the ones that could be made into any cell in the body and then injected into repair. I think we looked at that a few days before. There was they made some spine cells and they were injecting it into the spine, and then they were suggesting making lung cells and injecting it into the lung to repair damage. I mean, definitely amazing. I'm not going to say it's not amazing, but it puts us in positions of godlikeness where we have the Emperor's Apprentice over the building blocks of life. And the building blocks of life have now been commoditized to whoever has the most money can have the most life, it seems like to me. You know, the tech billionaires are working on all the longevity projects, and there are lots of them across all the big tech companies. We were just talking in chat yesterday in regards to Paul Allen, who was the co-founder of Microsoft. I don't know if you realize that he also has a brain project going on and a longevity project and a couple other scary things. He's invested in lots of different vaccination creation and stuff. You know, I don't think there's too many of them that kept themselves out of the game. Like I've said a number of times before, I mean, if you were in for making money on the end of the world as we know it, now would be the time to do it, because it is absolutely mad science gone mad. Venture capitalist funding is flying all over. And as anything goes, nobody is backing up the truck or putting any type of reins on any of this technology, because it's all about the 21st Century CARES Act, people. It's all about the rich guys and where they've invested their money. And, you know, I was just thinking, you know, we joked a few years ago that I would run for Congress, and I made up those yard signs just in pretend, but we could have done it for real. But it was Jules for Congress. I want to insider trade. Remember, they voted on themselves as to whether or not they were going to close that loophole to prevent themselves from being able to insider trade, as we find out that more than 50% of all the lawmakers in Congress are now millionaires. And they voted not to close that loophole. Well, doesn't it make sense as we're watching the 21st Century Cares video with the representatives saying, oh, yeah, it's in front of the House. It went through Congress. Now it's going to go to the House, and it's going to be so good for you, me, Johnny, Susie, Nana, because right now that pesky FDA is holding back cures that could save you and me. So let's get rid of any regulation whatsoever, and let's put it direct to the people who can pay for it. That's what that said. Because when you can pay for it, then us sitting here in Congress who can insider trade already have our stock where it needs to be. And the more of you bazillions of people who step right up, the better the payout is going to be at my next quarterly dividend. It makes a lot more sense now seeing the smiles on their faces and how adamant they were to get rid of the regulatory agencies and hand you right over to the machine. Anyway, so we're talking about creating artificial sperm cells from skin cells. Now we no longer need a male for procreation. Well, I postulated that they must have already created egg cells as well. Sure enough, I thought we'd covered this. This one was back from 2014. Artificial sperm and egg cells created from skin cells. Using human stem cells, researchers have created precursors to egg and sperm called primordial germ cells, like primordial goo. It's like the beginnings of the beginning. Yes, called primordial germ cells in a petri dish. And until this work, published in Cell Today, the feat has only been achieved using rodent stem cells. So, all of this now approved experimentation on human stem cells, human embryos, editing to make the superhuman. How long is this going to be before? Right now they're pulling in the reins saying, oh no, if we experiment on embryonic cells, they will never turn into a living creature. But we find out that China really doesn't care. China does not care what we tell them. I don't think Russia. I was reading, we've done a lot on the history of the United States biowarfare program and how it was all tied back to the days of Operation Paperclip, and we brought a lot of those scientists over here after World War II. Germany, they were doing a lot of disturbing experiments on animals and people and experimentation that people did not know about. And I am sure that there is still stuff going on today. I'm sure that there's we probably know the pinky tip. There are probably experiments going on today, and we're going to talk about some of those experiments. Except now it's right out in the open. Guess what? If we get rid of any and all regulatory approval for any of this medical mad science, it will become legalized, and with your consent, experimentation on humans. We talked about that a long time ago, about how, over the years, there's probably 10 or 12 different operations that have been called out, that they were caught. The federal government was caught experimenting on humans without their knowledge. Now, for the 10 or 12 that we know about, there's probably at least 10 or 100 times that on the QT, maybe smaller scale. But as we move forward in time, and now we have the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex has merged with the tech industry and now become really good butt patent pals with the military industrial complex, Department of Defense, so everything can be done in the name of national security. Because remember, if it's done in the name of national security, you don't have a say. You are but a piece of cannon fodder. Hey, everything is quiet. Now let's get rid of all these pesky regulatory agencies that were looking, at least we had hoped, looking out for the best interest of the citizen. And go direct to consumer. Hey, Johnny, It doesn't matter if the survival rates on this therapy aren't that good just yet, because you know what? You don't have a chance. You don't have a chance otherwise. And we are going to offer you the opportunity to be a part of a study that only very few people are a part of. But you're a special case, Johnny. You have this rare disorder that we might be able to help cure. And even if we don't, even if it doesn't help cure you, think about the good you are doing for the future of all the generations of humans yet to come. Your name will be in the history book and you will be famous. You know, psychology plays a big part in how this is all being allowed to happen. They groom you and stroke you and make you feel nice. And then they manipulate you. Then they push all those little buttons. Then they can make you purr like a kitty cat and do anything that they want you to. Way better than being a resistant consumer. Because there are those of us out there, resistant consumers, who are going to be kicking and screaming till the very end as they're being restrained with little nano whatevers in eyedroppers as they're dropping it in liquid in your eye so they can enter your brain as fast as possible. I see that happening. Clockwork Orange, just worse. Sorry, guys. I just have these flashes of dystopia while I'm talking. Anyway, so back to these mad science. Sperm and egg cells created from skin cells. I mean, it's not even like it was one thing when it was aborted fetal tissue that they were using to do stem therapy. And it's been a long time. I mean, since the 80s. And I even remember back then they were talking about, the irony that Reagan did not allow research into stem cell therapy because of the aborted fetal issue and his ethical, moral line that he drew in the sand because of his religion. But they said the irony was about all that is that it probably could have cured his Alzheimer's. And now we're seeing, look at fast forward in the future, there's all kinds of different thoughts for cures for Alzheimer's now that have nothing even to do with stem cells, though there is a stem cell therapy I was seeing using some of the technology that we were talking about earlier, where they could take the pluripotent cells and create like the very beginning cell lines and then inject them in. But it looks like more often than not, maybe some of the research that they're doing on Alzheimer's isn't because they're caring about curing the Alzheimer's. It's because they want to crack all the mysteries of the brain. So Alzheimer's and PTSD happen to be two perfect excuses for doing large-scale experimentation and testing on people. Anyway, so back to this artificial sperm and egg. Using human stem cells, researchers have created precursors to the egg and sperm called primordial germ cells in a petri dish. Till this work, published in Cell Today, the feat has only been achieved using rodent stem cells. One of the first events in the early development of both mice and men is a creation of primordial germ cells, or PGCs for short. After an egg is fertilized by sperm, embryonic stem cells begin to differentiate into various basic cell types that make up the fetus. A small number of these stem cells develop into primordial germ cells, which then go on to become egg or sperm. Germ cells are what? Well, here, this is where this makes sense. Ding, ding. Germ cells are immortal in the sense that they provide an enduring link between all generations, carrying genetic information from one generation to the next. Within the last decade, researchers have been reprogramming adult cells, such as skin cells, to act like embryonic stem cells with the potential to differentiate into practically any other type of cell in the body. And these induced pluripotent stem cells, there we go, have been used to develop human retinas and intestines, for example, as well as all kinds of other body parts we've been reading about. Like, they could be made into anything, pretty much. Researchers have also created these pluripotent stem cells that could differentiate then into primordial germ cells. But that has only been successful up until now in rodents. Well, thank goodness that they have approved experimenting on embryos in the UK, because now a team of researchers from the UK and where? Oh, Israel, have traced the genetic chain of events that directs the human stem cells to develop a primordial germ cell. The stage in our development is called specification. And once these cells become specified, they continue developing toward precursor sperm cells or ova, pretty much on autopilot. They found a master gene called SOX. They found a master gene called SOX17. That's SOX17. That helps direct stem cells in this process. And previous work found that SOX17 was involved in directing stem cells to become endodermal cells, which are the ones that develop into lung, gut, and pancreas cells. So this must have been some of the work that they were doing that we read about the other day, where they were turning some of these pluripotent stem cells into lung cells to treat lung damage or lung cancers and things. But this is the first time it has been seen in primordial germ cell specification. The international team followed their discovery by actually making primordial germ cells in the lab and using both embryonic stem cells and pluripotent stem cells, which are the reprogrammed adult skin cells from both males and females. The researchers made sex cell precursors with up to 40% efficiency. And when compared to the protein markers of their new lab-grown stem cells with real stem cells collected from aborted fetuses, they were found to be very similar. So look at, fast forward 30 years, and maybe we didn't miss anything not doing stem cell research on aborted fetuses. It is quite gruesome. And I guess for a number one, and we already got aborted fetus cell lines going in our vaccines. Why would we want to be using them anywhere else? Oh, and in our Pepsi. I don't know. Is that real? I'm pretty certain that I verified that story, that they were using it as a flavoring agent or something, which is beyond disgusting. But anyway, so it appears that, yes, technology has allowed us to take the very beginnings of life and recreate them, poof, in a petri dish. And then when we compared them to the actual fetal cells from actual aborted fetuses, guess what? They're very similar. And they work. And now, fast forward, this was 2014, fast forward 2 years from now, we have stories almost every day about them building something and some new therapy that they want to try, where they've created some new cell. We've replicated life. Look at it, and we've reprogrammed it and made it better. It's generation 2.0. But you know what? All these pesky laws and regulatory agencies are getting in our way of testing this on humans. And if you remember, we were talking a lot about the biowarfare program and vaccines and how Paperclip in the beginning was involved. And you had Bushy and Clan come through, and they passed this this, I don't know if it was a bill or a law or whatever you want to call it, called Project BioShield. Project BioShield basically dictated that the federal government was going to buy experimental vaccines from all these different manufacturers out there and put them into the national stockpile just in case of an emergency. And I mean, we know, just in case of an emergency, look, none of these were tested on humans. None of those were FDA approved, so we don't know if they work. But in the event of an emergency, taking care of all that, we made sure that we have the ace of spades, diamonds, and hearts all put away in sneaky little corners and warehouses. But we passed something called Project BioShield, that in the event of a real emergency, we could pull out all stops. We could throw the regulatory agencies out a window. And we have all these experimental vaccines that we can now be testing on you. So beware of declaring an emergency. Now, we saw that some of that happens during the, I'm trying to remember, was it the swine flu, the bird flu, or wait, it was the flu that had swine, bird, and some other chicken, cat flu. I don't know, but it was like a mixture of 3 flus, and oh my God, we ran out of vaccination, which we really didn't. Nobody was even getting them, and oh my God, there have been so many cases of so many people with sniffly noses that we've stopped counting. But when you ask us, there's a pandemic everywhere. We'll get the World Health Organization to hop on board. We'll declare an emergency. We'll open the doors to untested ingredients coming in from vaccinations over in the UK, utilizing squalene, because guess what? We told you we didn't have enough vaccine, and if it had gotten bad enough, we could have opened up Project BioShield's stores and tested all the mad science we had hiding in the dark corners of our strategic stockpile. Well, that's what I see is almost a parallel now. Again, for big pharma, except this time it's biopharma. They're making biologics now. They're not just vaccines. They're these living, breathing, manipulate us at a DNA level technologies. And, don't think that this doesn't have anything to do with vaccinations, because they've been messing around with putting different cells from different organisms into vaccines for a long time. There's that bovine serum. Who thinks that they should be injecting cow into your baby? Or the SV40 simian cancer virus that they found in all the polio. That, let me just tell you, that had been on the CDC's website. I read it with my own 2 eyes, saying that, they finally admitted, after all these years of being accused, they finally admitted that, yes, there was tainted vaccination with that SV40 cancer way back when, and it's gone now. Though, thank goodness, lots of people got screenshots of that page when the CDC forgot that they were trying to hide stuff and put that out there for the public to read for a little while. Anyway, so don't think that this 21st Century CARES Act is about you or me or making Nana live a long, healthy life. We heard that crap. They're like, oh, Kurzweil, the worst thing is to lose all that knowledge when we die. And so we're going to try and make everybody live forever. And in the meantime, it's going to be for you and your family. So step up. But it's not about you and your family for any of this. Curing disease isn't about curing your disease. It's about curing the rich guy's disease. It's about allowing anyone who can pay in the future to be able to have a safe and effective treatment. And in the meantime, if thousands of people die because they gave themselves up for the machine, hey, they were going to die anyway. That's how we're going to do this from an ethics perspective. You were going to die anyway. And if you got lucky and it worked, well, then you furthered science, and we'll stroke you and tell you that your name will be in the history books to make you feel good. We're not going to give you a cut of the $10 bazillion that you're going to help us make after being patient zero that actually worked. We're just going to use you because you are a piece of property. You are not free. And for as much as we think we are free, at some point, we're going to have to run and hide to stay away from this mad science gone mad that they want to get into every single one of us. This is not going to be optional in the future. You will be Cro-Magnon man. All right, let's look at this. So we've created now sperm cells, egg cells, and ova, primordial cells. Now we can also use stem cells, and this was from yesterday, brand spanking new, right before I went to bed. Scientists have now turned skin cells into heart cells and brain cells. Now, guys, we did a story about brain balls. Do you remember that? But the little brain balls that they were creating in a petri dish, and because the FDA wasn't giving approval for any of this stuff, that scientist had taken scrapings of his own skin, chemically coaxed them into those iPS pluripotent stem cells, and then turned them into little mini thinking brains in a petri dish. Yes, they did. And you know what? Before I read this story about coaxing into heart and brain cells, let's just do a quick search for brain balls. That actually was probably one of the best. Oh, and I get stressed, squishy brain balls. Wait, brain ball skin cells. And this sounds like a joke. This sounds ridiculous, but it's not. Here we go. Yes, in February, with a few skin cells, scientists can make a mini thinking brain. Open the sucker. There we go. And it's a cute little mini brain ball right on top of the article. All right, brain balls in the lab. With a few skin cells, scientists can make mini thinking versions of your brain. Think about how it may aid the research of what? Oh, on Zika, ding, ding, autism, ding, ding, and new drug production. Yay, bravo. Now we see where this is all going. By the way, Zika pandemic everywhere. Notice you're not hearing too much out of Brazil anymore, but we are hearing that there was a case in Texas. Then I heard there was a case in Canada. Oh, the horror. There was one in Niagara Falls, just north of Buffalo as well. And oh, it's climate change. That it's making it this far northward, but don't worry about it because we have a bunch of different pharmaceutical companies out there that are using all these new technologies to come up with a Zika vaccine that should be ready by the end of the summer. And since it's going to break out into such a pandemic level, we're going to have the World Health Organization come out and mandate pandemic vaccines. I don't know if they're going to do that, but they could. I also just saw, it was probably 2-3 days ago, 230 people dead now, I believe it said, in Brazil again. This time it's not from Zika or from dengue. Now it's from H1N1. Oh, yes, it rears its ugly head again. We might be able to pull out some more of that strategic stockpile, squalene-based vaccination, and test it on the Brazilians now. Because remember, I told you, I think they sold them. I think somebody somewhere in the government signed some papers down there and said, you know what? We are going to take our population, because that's all we have now left is capital, and we're going to sell them to the pharmaceutical industry. I think they do that. I really do. We are capital. And that's what they're doing here now. That is what this 21st century medicine is all about. They've just sold us to the machine. And everybody makes bazillions of dollars. And in the end, hey, the rulers, the people who give the green light will get butt patting and get to live to 150. All right, tiny rolling brain balls of cells knocking around in a lab may one day keep you from losing your marbles, among other things. The small cellular balls act like mini brains, mimicking aspects of the real thing, including forming noggin-like structures with pulsing electrical signals like a thinking mind, researchers reported in February of 2016 at the annual meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science in Washington, D.C. They talked about brain balls in D.C. The mini brains, which can be personalized based on whose cells that they are made from, may soon help scientists study a wide variety of diseases and health problems, from autism to Parkinson's to multiple sclerosis and Alzheimer's, as well as stroke, brain trauma, infections, such as the Zika virus. And how long is it going to be? My daughter and I were talking about like dumb $1 million ideas. Anybody, tell you what, there have been so many $1 million ideas out there that just started out as dumb ideas that then sold like wildfire, and these people became ultra billionaires. So all you got to do is come up with one dumb $1 million idea. And I was telling her about the pet rock when we were kids. Remember that? We watched a couple videos on YouTube, the commercials for the pet rock, and like, oh my God, how on earth do people fall into buying that? The 21st century version of that could be my pet brain and sell little DIY gene editing CRISPR kits at home, right? We already got those. Just a little DIY kit that allows you to scrape some skin cells into a petri dish that's included. And then, I don't know, a couple little eyedroppers of whatever those chemicals are to stroke those cells to turn them into whatever you need it to be and make yourself your own little mini brain ball out of your own skin cells that can think and roll around. I don't know. This is just beyond bizarre. I mean, this is what I was talking about yesterday, commoditizing life to the point where what is the value of life anymore? Life is sacred. Life is something that was a miracle to create, but guess what? It's not a miracle anymore. And maybe it was only a miracle because science hadn't caught up with what was going on. I would still say that there are lots of unknowns, but the fact that we can wantonly create life and then do whatever we want with it, we can bastardize it to any sick way and crisscross it with pig genes and horse genes and spider genes, and you want to have claws that come out when you get mad. It's anything goes. We're at the point right now where we know enough to be beyond dangerous. It's anything goes. And once you start editing genomes, and I know, hey, it's only in the lab right now, but again, it's only in the lab, in the front room. In the back room, they could be doing anything they want. Not like we have patrols that go around sniffing with superpowers to find out where genetic experiments are going on that haven't been reported, that are unethical. This could be going on. I mean, they literally, when I first read, we mentioned it again yesterday, the Chinese clone factory. When I first read about the Chinese clone factory, and I verified that it was 1 million cattle a year, so it wasn't a month, thank God. They're saying they want to use it to produce 1 million cattle a year. Now, remember, China was also the country that had already produced the cattle that had the human breast milk gene that they spliced into it. So the cow would produce human breast milk. Okay? Now, found out UC Berkeley got their hands on a bunch, not the human breast milk cows, but I'm trying to remember what they spliced into those cows in Berkeley. Was it the horns? That was the longhorns. We were just talking about that one at dinner yesterday too, where they genetically modified some of these new longhorn, not new longhorn, but the longhorn cows. So now there's new ones, so they fit better into shipping crates because their horns were too big. But they had something else special. We'll have to look that up over the weekend. So I don't remember. We covered that a few months back, but there are some special genetically modified cattle now at UC Berkeley. But, in China, so they have these clone factories now that they want to produce. They're working on these beagles. They found a way to beef up the muscle, and they want to use them for military or drug-sniffing dogs, they said. They also, in that clone factory, are going to clone Fido for you. Not make Super Fido, but just Fido. If you got enough money, little dead Fido, just save some of his poop samples and send them on to China, and they'll create you a duplicate for the right price, of course. But that's just the front room. And then the owner of that factory came out and said, hey, and you know what? We also can clone en masse humans. Well, just because they're not doing it and he's winking, I can guarantee you that somewhere in the back room, since they already have been messing with modification on human embryos, we found out the second time that they've announced in China, they now are trying to create embryos that are resistant to HIV infection. And what's interesting about that is that's one of those RNA infections, RNA viruses, they call them. There's a bunch of RNA viruses that we read about. Even herpes is an RNA virus. Chickenpox is an RNA virus. So once you get it once, even though it goes into remission, it never goes away. So it can come back again. So cold sores, you can get them when you get stressed out because they're always there. Chickenpox can turn into shingles when you get older and you're all stressed out. That happened to a friend of mine. And actually, I've known a few people now who've gotten shingles as they got older, and it was all related to stress. Stress ruins your immune system, see? So your immune system can't keep it in check. Anyway, so what worries me, though, so China's been doing all this human embryo testing, and we know about 2 cases on the front end, but there's probably 1,000 cases on the back end that we don't know about. And yes, clone factories where you can make 100,000 cows a year. Imagine how many humans they could be pumping out with special gifts. Like, HIV resistant babies. Tomorrow, it's going to be babies whose legs can grow and where they can get tall just at the thought. Or they could have little bullets shoot out of their fingers. I mean, it's the sky is the limit. Once they crack all these mysteries, the sky is the absolute limit. This needs to stop. Says there are a variety, so back to the mini brains, there are a variety of places where mini brain could be useful, says Wayne Drevitz of Janssen Pharmaceuticals, Inc., who was not involved in the research. In some cases, they may offer a cheaper, more ethical, and more realistic model for human health than mice and other mammals, he said to the researchers at the conference. Researchers who developed the tiny brains, led by Thomas Hartung of Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health. And yeah, I remember when we read this article, Johns Hopkins University is where they have the biggest brain database in existence and is loaded with children's brain scans. So there's been tons of brain research going on there from the very beginning. They hope to have these mini brains commercially available this year. 2016, we're going to start selling mini brains on the shelf. Yeah, see, ding, commercially available. Remember, sprinkle the taxpayer dollars from DARPA to the university. have the students develop some new novel therapy, spin them out into a little startup with some venture capitalist funding from a rich tech titan maybe thrown in there in the mix. Put a couple of smart cookies from places like Johns Hopkins and places with influence onto the board of directors, and then poof, create an IPO, go public, and get it on the shelf and make bazillions of dollars. It's like cookie cutter now. It's happening every single day. Be in the stores near you by Christmas. But Hartung admits we are not the first or the fanciest mini brains. Oh no. There's competition in the mini brain market. Other miniature brains have already been made. There's a picture of Homer Simpson next to this with a tiny little brain connected by a little line to his spine. Other miniature brains have already been made that are more complex and brain-shaped rather than little mini balls. Yet those tiny brain-shaped brains can be difficult to create and work with, says Hartung. Some require embryonic stem cells to make, which are tricky to get and ethically murky to use. And we talked about that. And some of the miniature brains take months to grow and are relatively large, which means that they quickly rot from the inside out because they lack blood vessels and circulation to feed the cells embedded deep in the artificial organ. So I guess the little mini brains don't rot from the inside out. Phew! Hartung and colleagues came up with a solution to all of these problems. The research started off with easy-to-collect adult skin cells and chemically coaxed them to revert to stem cells, nixing the need for embryonic versions. And from there, the researchers cajoled. Come on, what they do? Go through a thesaurus to come up with words? The researchers cajoled the cells into differentiating into a variety of brain cells, including different nerve cells plus glial cells, which support and protect nerve cells. To get the cells to form teeny brain balls, yes, it says that, the researchers then put the cells into a shaking incubator where the cells literally are rolled into small spheres around 300 micrometers in diameter, roughly about 3 times the thickness of a dollar bill. Yes, not a human hair, a dollar bill. Cha-ching! I like that reference. Anyone reading this story who wants to be involved in this research now has visions of dancing dollar bills that are connected to visions of little rolling brain balls. The tiny size allows the brains to slip past the problem of rotting innards, but they still maintain a brain-like setup with the different types of neurons linking up and passing signals. The whole process takes only 8 weeks, and we can produce thousands and thousands of mini brains all at once. How wonderful is that? Mini brains connected to DNA storage, connected to a couple mini brain implants, mapped ATCG to zeros and ones, and connected to Kurzweil's cloud. Yeah, there we're done. I mean, how twisted is this? On a daily basis, we cover these stories, and we go back and we get updates on stories we've talked about, and we start to realize that this isn't even laughable anymore. It's sick. It's beyond sick. This is life we're talking about. These are brains and eyeballs and spleens. You know what I'm saying? That we're talking about, that we're creating artificially and then poking and prodding and connecting to stuff and mixing and matching spider cells or cow cells, who knows, to make who knows, letting it out who knows where. Oh yeah, and sending out 60,000 copies of CRISPR bacteria for people to start gene editing in their own garage in their parents' back bedroom. Where's this gonna leave us? This is just the beginning, people. You know, we look at this, and I know we've been covering this already for 3-4 years of crazy mad science, but, you know, I get to the point where it's like, oh, look, it's another brain ball. Oh, look, it's another stem cell created out of toenail clippings or something. But this is just the beginning. And if we've come this far in just these last few years, imagine, like, Kurzweil's already saying 2029. Not 2045 anymore, 2029. We'll be giving it all up. 2020, robots are going to take more than half the jobs. That's 4 years from now. Everybody's on the AI bandwagon, and now we're creating mini brain balls in petri dishes from a scab you picked off your hands. You know, it's just, this has got to stop. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'm no prude by any sense of the imagination. Trust me. I'm not standing around with protest signs out in front of clinics or anything either. But we've crossed an ethical line that should not be crossed. We are giving them the power to manipulate and control all of life on the planet. You know, and they're going to do it under the guise of wolf in sheep's clothing. Look, we're doing it all for your benefit. And we're using all this taxpayer dollars to fund a lot of this stuff, the Brain Initiative and 21st Century Medicine. And we're giving it to all these pharmaceutical companies and startups and universities and Israel. Oh, yeah, because Israel's a part of all this, too. Part of our collaboration project in science. But it's about learning how to control everything and how to own everything and how to profit from everything. And remember, getting the eraser out, and all of these pharmaceutical companies and device manufacturer companies, once that 21st Century Care Act is passed, they've sold us the magic, the mumbo jumbo, all the wondrous things. Look, the dangling carrots, you could live forever. Once they've sold us to jump onto that bandwagon, you're going to lose every last bit of autonomy that you ever had. I mean, self-driving cars are tomorrow, but remote-controlled brains are next year. You know, they're already messing around with that. We already looked at some of that, being able to control things with your mind and them tapping into all the different brainwaves and things without even an implant. Eventually. Anyway, let's finish reading about mini brain balls, because, again, it always happens. We're down to the last 10 minutes of the show, and I don't know how that happened so fast. Upon closer examination, the researchers found that many of the nerve cells on the mini brains developed electrical insulating layers called myelin sheaths, which is exactly where in MS they find you have damage. And the myelin sheaths, which are made up of glial cells, are critical for properly functioning nerve cells. Demyelination is a key feature in many neurodegenerative diseases such as ding-ding, multiple sclerosis. And this promises to be a fantastic model to study MS. And the mini brains spontaneously generated electrical activity as well, producing brain waves. These mini brains have brain waves. I mean, are they alive? That's the other question. Like, ethically speaking, I was even disturbed by the large moth and the cockroach. The large moth that had the nanowires embedded during his pupil or larvae stage into its brains. When it grew up, it could be remote controlled by joystick. Right? We saw that video. Or the cockroach that they released 1 million little nanobots inside of its body to see if they could get it to attach to some of its ganglial cells. I had issues with both of those, even if they're insects. They're living organisms. So if we now have these little brains that then have actual myelin sheaths and they have brain waves, are they not at some level alive? Should we not be thinking about the ethics of experimenting on a live, potentially thinking, feeling little mini brain? Even though you created it, Frankenstein. You made Frankenstein's monster. That's your baby. You can't torture it, give it 6 eyeballs, and then chuck it in a corner when it's not pretty anymore. I mean, what? I just can't even. I mean, this makes me like feel sick, literally, like upset sick, because this just is so. We're monsters. If this is what the human race has become, we've become monsters. This isn't for the good of anything. This is for the good of monsters. And they're going to be able, as all these secrets are cracked now, they're going to be able to turn it into any monster that they want. Today it's mini brain balls. Tomorrow it's Godzilla. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, the imagination is your only limitation at this point. And these mini brain balls spontaneously generate electrical activity producing brain waves. Hartung says they are thinking. Although without any sensory input information, right? Because we haven't connected the GPU or anything for eyes yet. But they have nothing to think about, he added. So there are countless possibilities how these brains could help research. In particular, Hartung said that he is most excited to use the mini brains to study autism and has already made mini brains from cells from a person with Down syndrome. He is also hopeful that the brains will be used for pharmaceutical companies, yes, to test potentially new drugs, offering a more realistic model for how drugs work in people without the need to use animals. And of course, you know, animal testing is a horrible thing, and none of us like to see the little bunnies or the little beagles or the little monkeys strapped, immovable, with little eyedroppers dripping shit into their eyeballs as they burn out. Of course not. So, you know, we'll come up with something more ethical. Let's use little mini brain balls. And none of this is right. This is just, I don't even know what to say, guys. By the end of a week of dealing with stuff like this, I'm speechless. Anyway, so he's hopeful that these mini brain balls will be used for pharmaceutical companies testing new potential drugs, offering a more realistic model on how drugs work in people without the need to use animals. After all, Hartung says, ha ha ha, humans are not 150-pound rats. Or are they? But right now, he cautions, I am selling hope, says the mini brains are brand new and have not proven useful yet. Many researchers at the conference were equally enthused about their potential, and after presenting at the meeting, Hartung is now in talks to use these little mini brains to study Zika. Well, imagine, you think they're going to grow little mini brains with the stem cells of Zika damaged people and maybe make pluripotent cells that then they can inject into a brain that's been damaged? Oh, don't think that, Jewel. Let's just wait and see. I see that this Zika whole thing had an agenda. I don't even think it was real. I mean, it might have been real, but I don't think it was natural. That Zika that came out of nowhere, that never bothered anybody, it was real mild, just gave you a little tummy ache and maybe some muscle aches and fever, but never bothered anyone. So we never really did any major research into it. Just turned into this monster virus out of the blue because of climate change. Yes. And now, guess what? those genetically modified Zika mosquitoes, I'm pretty certain that they already released them in Brazil, and now they're thumping. The FDA already gave the rubber stamp approval to those genetically modified mosquitoes in the Keys, even though the citizens of the Keys do not want those mosquitoes. And I think there's a little bit of a ruckus going on right now, but you wait and see. You wait and see. It's all about now. The Petri dish is the big blue marble we call Earth. Anyway, Zika, the virus, currently exploding throughout South and Central America, and so we must come up with a cure. And it has been linked to neurological conditions, some also involving demyelination. Yes, remember that pesky Zika virus? Not only did it cause brain defects, but they found caused all these other weird things. It's now mimicking an autoimmune disease like multiple sclerosis. How weird. We never saw that before either. Just angers me. Anyway, and it causes a birth defect, and of course they found patient 0 that they were able to say, yes, we definitely now have proven it causes this birth defect called microencephaly. Yes, we have the one case just like that fruit tree where they found the one single infected fruit bat that started the whole Ebola pandemic in Africa. We now have found that one case where we can absolutely 100% prove that Zika has caused microencephaly. Yeah, I'll believe that one. All right. Well, guys, if you can even possibly believe it, I still have about 27 stories to go, and we have about 25 seconds left. So, listen. Evidence emerges that 45% of common sunscreen ingredients mess with your sperm function, so don't worry about it. Keep slapping on that nanotechnology and let your spermies take a nap, because we could just scrape off some skin cells and make new ones. All right, guys, everyone have an awesome Friday. Make sure you stick around. Lonnie Clark is live up next, and I will catch up with you on Monday. Everybody take care.